Good morning. We are going to be reviewing lesson 39 today. So if you missed lesson 39, this video is going to be helpful to you. So today's lesson is about tenants. We'll talk about that in a second. And here's your Bible joke for today. What's a missionary's favorite type of car? A missionary is a person who goes and tells people about God. Could be in their own community or another community. And they convert people to Christianity. Hey, some of you might have figured it out. Their favorite car is a convertible. Get it? Convertible. Ha ha ha. All right, your verses are in Google Classroom. You can click on this on your exit tickets and listen to them all. I'm going to skip these for now and dive into the lesson. Make sure you don't skip them when you're doing your exit ticket. Module 1, Matthew. We've been talking about how communication was given by Jesus when he gave parables, and he gave different types of communication, like with figurative language. Then the second type of communication was the Lord's Prayer, and we talked about how we communicate to God our Father. The third type of communication is now during our discussion unit. So the two things we're going to be doing today is expressing our own ideas and building on others' ideas. Now, it's going to be hard to do unless you're at the North Campus and you're pausing the video, but if you're doing this because you missed class, I want you to still think about your own ideas. Here is the hook for today. Watch this video. When you're done, you're going to answer these questions. This is all on page 97. I actually changed and added a third question as well. So get ready to write your answers on page 97 after you watch this clip. Well, this is an ad.
The new icing glazed apple fritter. Finally, there's a way to turn your coffee into a dipping sauce. Meet the new bakery sweets at McDonald's.
Okay,
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
that looks good. Okay, but here's the real clip. Here we go.
Once upon a time, in a faraway land, a young prince lived in a shining castle. Although he had everything his heart desired, the prince was spoiled, selfish, and unkind. But then, one winter's night, an old beggar woman came to the castle and offered him a single rose in return for shelter from the bitter cold. Repulsed by her haggard appearance, the prince sneered at the gift and turned the old woman away. But she warned him not to be deceived by appearances, for beauty is found within. And when he dismissed her again, the old woman's ugliness melted away to reveal a beautiful enchantress. The prince tried to apologize, but it was too late, for she had seen that there was no love in his heart. And as punishment, she transformed him into a hideous beast and placed a powerful spell on the castle and all who lived there. Ashamed of his monstrous form, the beast concealed himself inside his castle with a magic mirror as his only window to the outside world. The rose she had offered was truly an enchanted rose, which would bloom until his 21st year. If he could learn to love another and earn her love in return by the time the last petal fell, then the spell would be broken. If not, he would be doomed to remain a beast for all time.
All right, I want you to go ahead and write down, why did the man turn the old woman away? Go ahead and pause the video and jot down your thoughts. When you're done, then hit play again. Okay, second question. Think deeper. Why was the prince's response a problem? Go ahead and pause the video and answer the question. Great. For the first question, why did the man turn the old woman away? You should have come up with something like she was old, he was didn't like her appearance, and he was repulsed by her. Why was the prince's response a problem? You should have written something like he looked at the outside and not the inside. He was responding to what he saw and not seeing her need and helping her out. What happened as a result? He was actually transformed into a hideous beast. He looked at the outside and not the heart, which actually showed his true character. Well, today we're going to talk about the true character of some people, and I'm going to tell you more about that. Before I do, there's a few things you need to know about this text before we get into it. A tenant is a renter. In our text today, there's going to be some people who rent land, and I'll talk to you about that. Some of you may know about renting. I used to rent an apartment for many years, and I was a tenant, and the person I rented from was my landlord. We're going to talk about that in a minute. God's people are the Israelites. Also the Jews, same thing. Abraham, many, many years ago, many of you remember this, looked up at the sky and saw the stars, and God said, I will give you that many descendants. Those became the Israelites. Those are God's people. I'll tell you more about that in a minute too. We're going to come across this word heir. Looks like hair, but it's heir. And heir is a person who receives an inheritance, one who inherits. So when my parents die, me and my siblings are the heir to whatever they have. If they have $100 when they die, we would split that 4 ways. Okay, we'd each own $25. We'd inherit that. And not a huge inheritance, right? Prophets are people who were rejected and killed. Back in the Old Testament, God spoke directly to the prophets. The prophets could hear what God was saying, and they would share with the people. But interestingly, some of the people didn't respond very well to prophets. Sometimes they picked up stones and they would throw it at the prophet and kill them. One prophet named Isaiah, many of you are familiar with him, was put into a hollow log and sawn in half. It's crazy. People just responded poorly. And the people who responded poorly to these prophets were the Israelites, God's own people. The last word we're going to talk about right now is entitlement. Entitlement is whenever you hear the thought, I deserve something, that means that person thinks they're entitled to or that they deserve it, okay? So all those thoughts we're going to talk about as we read our text today. Now I want you to look at my paper here for a minute. I want you to see a couple things before we begin. Number one, I'm going to just draw a little picture for you here at the bottom. No, I'll draw it up here. This story is about a man who owns a vineyard. So I'm going to draw all these little vines, pretend there's grapes on all those. And he owns this vast vineyard. And he builds a fence around it, around his land, and he builds a giant tower, probably so someone could stand on the tower and look in case there was like a wolf over here or something attacking the grapes. But what he did was, he was a busy man, so he rented out his vineyard to some other people who took care of it. They were the renters. They were the tenants, okay? So these guys took care of the vineyard. They got paid for doing it. The landlord then left, and one day he would come back and he is going to ask for the grapes because they're his, right? He also has something called a wine press where the grapes from the vineyard would go into this wine press and press it out so it would be like juice, and then it would ferment over time and then become wine, okay? So let's begin with our text. Jesus, I'm going to draw a little man with a crown that represents Jesus. He is the one who's speaking here. It goes like this. Hear another parable. Remember, Jesus is talking. There was a master of a house, that's this guy right here. There was a master of a house who planted a vineyard and put a fence around it and dug a wine press in it and built a tower and leased it to tenants. These are the tenants right here. And he went into another country. When the season for fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants to get his fruit. And the tenants took his servants, beat one, killed another, and stoned another. I'm going to pause right there. Wait. So this man who owns the vineyard sent some servants. These servants, let me move that down. These servants were beaten, stoned, killed. That's supposed to remind you of something. Do you remember? It's supposed to remind you of the real life prophets. Sometimes I tell Dre and Lele bedtime stories and I just change their names a little. I say like Lulu and Droy, and they go, wait, do you mean Lele and Dre? Right? When Jesus is telling this story, he wants them to connect it to real life people like the prophets. Verse 36. Again, he sent other servants more than the first. Okay, so now I'm going to draw more servants here. And they did the same to them. Oh my goodness, which means they killed them. I'm going to draw X's over them. Beat them, stone them, kill them. Finally, he sent his son to them, saying, they will respect my son. Oh my goodness, so now he's going to send his son. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and have his inheritance. So they thought they could own the land because this son is eventually going to own the land when the dad dies. Wait a minute. People killed and stoned reminds me of the prophets. More people killed and stoned reminds me of the prophets. Who does this remind you of? It should remind you of the Son, Jesus, and this should remind you of God the Father. It says, and they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. When therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? Now here's the question Jesus is asking. I'm going to pause right there. When the owner comes back, what will he do to these guys who killed the prophets, or in this case, the servants, and the son? And we should be thinking of Jesus. What is God going to do to these guys? Let's read. Jesus was talking to people, and here's what the people, when Jesus was telling the story, he's telling it to these people, and they answered, he will put those wretches to a miserable death and let out the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the fruits in their seasons. So they answered, oh, this owner, he is going to kill them, and he's going to actually find some new guys to work in the fields. Jesus said to them, have you never read in the scriptures, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone? Scholars, a cornerstone is the very first stone that was built in a building. It looks like this. And the whole building is straight, and it has a strong foundation because of that stone. That is Jesus. He is the beginning of our faith. He is the anchor for our building in our hearts of faith. And so we're talking about this stone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing his fruits. This word you is talking about Israel, God's people. And now Jesus says it's going to be given to everybody else. All they have to do is believe. Gentiles are people who are not Jews. I'm actually not a Jew. I am Italian. I like to say like pepperoni and things like that, but my great-grandparents came from Italy. And so I'm actually a Gentile. Well, this is wonderful news. Jesus is saying, because these people are going to destroy God's son, and these are God's own people, the Jews, God says, I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to make a way for other people to come in. Okay? Look what happens. Skip to 45. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, these are the religious leaders of the day, remember? They think they're so good. They're Jews, though, but they actually don't believe Jesus is the Messiah. Instead, they want to kill him. When they heard his parables, they perceived that he was speaking about them. Kind of like when I tell those stories to Dre and Lele, they know I'm talking about them. And although they were seeking to arrest him, they feared the crowds because they held him to be a prophet. Ladies and gentlemen, the tenants, Jesus is talking about Jews or Israelites, which are the chief priests and the Pharisees. So they knew these guys were representing the Pharisees and the chief priests. We're not going to read this next story right here, so you can just skip that. We're going to come over here. Question 3, you're going to put an X over. Right now, what I want you to do is answer these 2 questions. The first is, what are the events precipitated or caused by the tenant's choice to kill the master's son? So those guys right here who chose to kill this guy. What happened after that? Now you might be like, Mrs. Tyson, the text doesn't say what the next event was that happened after that. You can either tell me what happened in the story that Jesus was telling or what happened in the whole text. What I mean is, you can tell me what happened right here in the story, or you can tell me what happened in the rest of the whole text, okay? Pause the video, take a minute, write down what's an event that happened after and because the tenants chose to kill the master's son. Okay, the next question is, what message did Jesus want the people to understand from this parable, from the parable of the tenants? You're going to write your ideas right here. You can do bullet points like that. You can write incomplete sentences. Go ahead, pause the video and go ahead. Great. Many people for the events caused by the tenant's choice to kill the master's son. Many people wrote something like, the master killed the tenants. Remember, he put them to a miserable death. Some people also put, Jesus explained the parable. Some people also put the leaders, like the religious leaders, were, sorry, there's about to be a bell. There we go. The leaders were upset because they knew it was about them. You could have any of those ideas and more. When you discuss together, you would, when somebody shares an idea, you would write their ideas while you're listening over here, and you would agree or disagree using these discussion prompts, okay? So as someone is sharing out, what I would do is I would jot their idea down here, I would put their name here, and then I would raise my hand and say, I'd like to add on to that, and I would, I'd like to build off your idea. I'd use one of these phrases. Maybe if I disagree, I'd say, not the way you might interpret that is, and I'm going to use these phrases over here with my notes to share new ideas and to build on their ideas. Here's the second one. What message did Jesus want people to understand? Go ahead and share your thoughts out. Pause my video. While people are sharing ideas, you should be writing it over here. Your ideas should be on the left. Their ideas should be on the right. Okay, some ideas might be people wanted Jesus. What message did Jesus want people to understand from this parable? He wanted to understand that anyone who believes can enter God's family. He wanted them to know that the Jews rejected God, at least some of them did, right? He wanted them to know Jesus was going to die, right? There are several more you could be writing, but these are some of the ones I'm writing. When someone shares an idea, you jot their idea down with their name and you agree or disagree, okay? The final thing on the back, we did this together. I'm going to cover this up with my mask. The concept I gave my scholars was entitlement. That is that the Pharisees and the religious leaders, as well as the Jews, they thought that God owed them because they were Jews, so they thought they deserved to be in heaven and to have salvation. The theological principle here is God gives anyone who believes the opportunity to go to heaven, not just Jews or the people who were born in Abraham's family. Now he opened it up for anyone. Go ahead and pause this if you need to copy it down. The gospel glimpses always start with law, and they have gospel. So law says, if I work hard enough, I can earn it. But the gospel says Jesus worked. All I have to do is believe. A lot of times the Jews thought they had to obey perfectly, and so did the religious leaders, and they got upset when Jesus argued against all their rules as being reasons they could go to heaven. Go ahead and pause that if you need to copy it. The last one is right here. For an application, what I chose was, I'm trying to connect it to this word up here, entitlement. And instead of thinking I deserve something, like I deserve to have, I'm going to use something that bothers me. Usually when something bothers you, you know you feel entitled to it. So bothers me that I have to wear a mask all the time, right? That's really rude of me to think, but let's just be honest, sometimes I feel that way. It's entitlement that makes me think that. So instead of being upset that I have to wear a mask, I'm going to say, wow, God, thank you that I'm healthy. I'm going to flip that thing that I think I deserve on its head, and I'm going to be thankful for the opposite. So today I will thank God for, and then I'm going to put my health. You need to put your own thing, don't copy mine. That is what I'm going to do. Guys, at the bottom of this, it's a discussion rubric. This is what I'm looking for right now in your discussion. And then starting next lesson, we're going to start quoting scripture. Make sure you're giving new ideas and make sure you're building when other people are talking. If you're not contributing to the discussion, you will not get a good grade. So push yourself, learn a lot. Love you guys. Bye.